Are you stuck on PVA? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the KC CHIROpulse podcast, brought to you by CATS Consultants, helping doctors keep their pulse on success. I'm Dr. Michael Perusich, and I'm joined by Dr. Troy Fox. We are your hosts for today's podcast. Troy, you and I have talked about this for years, getting
Yes.
stuck on PVA. Does it make
Yes.
sense, or is it on shaky
Yeah.
ground?
Yeah. I think it's on shaky ground. And you
I
and
hear
I've
you.
talked about it. I'm not gonna spoil the big one here, but it's a manipulative number. It's not what I would call a statistically sound number. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's been used in some nefarious ways to identify and to really probably pigeonhole some practices.
It,
So
it has
maybe
by
talk a
some
little bit
groups. Yeah.
how can we pigeonhole a practice using PVA, and why is that a manipulative term? Why do you think?
Well, I think it can be if you're using it to say there's a certain PVA number you should be at or above.
Right.
So if I say you should be at 25 PVA or
Yeah.
above or you're not successful, that
Yeah.
that's kind of ludicrous when you really think about what makes PVA. PVA, for those of you
Yeah.
that don't know, is your total patient visits divided by your new patients.
That was really a coined term from back in the 90s, early 2000s is when that was really a
Mercedes
big, and
80s.
and it just has never left the statistics numbers, and people still talk about it, but it was really big back then. But go back to that again. You said it is
It's patient
patient
visits,
visits divided
divided
by
by
what?
new patients. And it's supposed to
So
give you a relativity of how often your new patients are coming in the door. But in
yeah.
reality, those two numbers actually have no direct relationship to each other.
No, they don't. And so that creates some real issues with that number.
It can. And, I
Hmm.
get it. We still track it for clients.
Sure.
We haven't eliminated it from the statistical models, but you have to realize that that was a statistic that was used as a standard, that it
Hmm.
really wasn't measuring anything other than how do you stand up next to other practices. It
Hmm.
doesn't define success.
No.
And when you talk about manipulative, here's how it's manipulative. Let's say,
Hmm.
let's say, well, here, let's just do a little math. Okay.
Okay.
I've got my calculator right here.
Let's do some math. You got your
Let
calculator.
Yeah, let's say you're a practice that sees 200 patients a week, so that's 800 patient visits for the month. And
Hmm.
Troy, just pick a new patient number. How many new patients are we seeing?
Well, we'll make this one a real rounded number. They're seeing 20 new patients a month.
Okay, 20. So we can do
Yeah.
that in our head. So your PVA is 40. Now,
Hmm.
that sounds fantastic, but let's
Yeah.
look at it one other way. Let's take the same 800 patient visits, and instead of
Hmm.
seeing 20, we're shooting the lights out, bringing new patients in the door. We can't beat them off with a stick. We're bringing in 40 a month.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, my PVA just went from 40 to 20. Did I become a bad practice? What
No.
changed? So that number doesn't really mean anything. And you can flip it around the other way. If you're a high volume practice seeing 1,200 patient visits, and let's say you were just a really fast paced wellness practice, and you're
Hmm.
seeing 300 patient visits a week, which is pretty doable,
Hmm.
and you have high retention, and let's say you only see 5 new patients a month because that's all you need to replace,
Hmm.
your PVA is 240.
Yeah.
It's a superfluous number.
Yeah. So if I'm trying to catch up with you and your practice, or you're trying to catch up with me, I have to either do one of two things to bump my PVA up. I either A, have to get a bunch more patient visits,
Yep.
right? Or I can reduce the number of new patients, which is
Dial back your new
counterintuitive.
patients.
But I will tell you that in my practice, I don't really care what my PVA is, nor do I care what my new patients are, because it's kind of a nonsense number. What I care about is how many patients I'm servicing and what my retention rate is. That's what I care about, is retention of patients, because I want
Yep.
patients to get well and stay well.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of a nonsense number. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today, because it really can get you bogged down in the mire when you start looking at PVA and somebody tells you, well, gee, your PVA should be above 50. And you're like, my PVA is like 18 right now. Okay, how do I get there? Reduce your new patient numbers. I
Yeah,
could tell you that
that'll do it
as a
really fast.
consultant, would I ever tell you that? Hey, don't take any new patients this month and your PVA will go
It'll
up.
go through the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It'll
so it's
it'll
a really, yeah,
it'll be 100% the same number as your patient visits if you don't see any. And
exactly.
we're not trying to step on any toes here necessarily. I know
No.
I know it's a statistic that's been used for ever and ever. Um,
Hmm.
it's probably been around as long as Harvey
It's
Lillard,
a
but
trending number that
it
we can
is.
look at to see if your practice is healthy or not. But I'm going to look at how many new patients you have and how many visits you have, and then your PVA. I'm going to look at all three of those together and go, okay, you have a pretty healthy practice. Or, wow, you are literally cranking out wellness adjustments. You're not seeing a lot of new patients. It kind of gives me an idea what kind of practice you're running and
Sure.
what's happening in a month's time in your practice. So it's not a horrible statistic. I just don't think it's one that's a gold standard that has a set number that you should be at.
No, it really doesn't tell you anything about
Mm-mm.
success.
No.
Neither do your new patient numbers. Really, none of those numbers individually do. So, why are we in practice? Well, unless you're a 501c3, you're in practice to turn a profit, right?
Hmm.
So, how do we get to profit? Well, we get to profit by creating enough collectible services and making sure that those collectible services are enough above our expenses to cover our cost per patient visit and leave behind a profit.
Hmm. Hmm.
And far too often we're trying to drive those new patient numbers up. So we change our PVA, trying to drive those new patient numbers up. So we, in theory, try to inject a lot more patient visits into the practice, which is the
Hmm.
hardest way to grow your practice. We need to be looking more as a profession at the retention side of the practice and the
Hmm.
profit side of the practice. That's where
Right.
the true success of the practice is. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm getting the stick. We need to take
Yeah.
a pause for a
Yeah.
word from our sponsor. So hang
Yes,
on,
for sure.
everybody. We'll be right back. Here's a quick message from our sponsor, KC Chiropractic Business Advisors.
Is your team dropping the ball?
Do you have your go-to person who always has the ball?
Is your team trained and ready for what daily practice throws at them?
Can you depend on your team to catch the training on their own?
Let us help you hit it out of the park.
All right, everybody, we are back and we are talking about the value of PVA and whether or not that really says what it says about your success is really what we're talking about. And Troy, I think we've kind of come to the conclusion, as you and I have had this conversation probably 1,000 times over, I'm not going to say how long we've known each other because it's forever, but
Make us seem old. Yeah.
yeah. It's a good industry standard, but it doesn't say anything about your success. Because again, those two numbers just are not related enough to each other. I don't want to say they're inversely related because that would suggest a relationship. They really have nothing
Right.
to do with each other.
No, I think what you said makes the most sense, though, and it really follows business practices and models. So, you don't really hear the Ford dealership trying to get new client. Let's get 60 new people coming in buying a car. What do they want? They want return clients. They want clients that are happy and that they're returning back to that same dealership or that same brand of car over and over again. So what do they have? They have a retention model. So
Right.
that's number one. They're trying to retain. And number two, they want to make sure that they generate enough income that their margin is decent. And that's what every great business book talks about. Because what do they talk about? How expensive it is to bring in a new client, a new customer, a new patient, as opposed to what it costs to retain that patient. So the retention model is all over business and it makes sense to do that. And so the PVA, you don't ever hear that. You don't hear that outside of chiropractic. And really, it's kind of a, I'm not going to call it a nonsense number, but it's a number that has its place, but it's not the be all end all number. I think we need to look at, like you said, retention and profit margin. Those are the things we need to look at in practice. And quite frankly, folks, when we look at your practices, those are the things that we look at, because we can tell a healthy practice by retention and profit margin all day long.
All day long. Yep.
Yeah.
All day long. And the practices that call us that feel like they're kind of in trouble, it's because they've gotten focused on the wrong things. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Call us. Let us help you turn that ship around. That's what we do. One of the great things that we do, if we're talking about stats, in my opinion, is the 32-point statistical analysis and trending analysis that we do on practices. I mean, we take such a deep dive on your practice. Here's why that's important, because those analyses help us see key indicators in your practice where problems may be starting to arise, just like a meteorologist watches the radar to see where the storms are going to develop and can tell where in 6 hours a tornado is going to hit, for example. We can tell that same kind of information from your statistics if we model it correctly. So we spend a great deal of time really diving deep into your practices. I don't necessarily care, at least in the beginning, what your new patient numbers are. That's not the value of your practice right off the bat. Let's figure out how to create a profitable process in your practice that meets your vision that you want to practice in every day, so it works for you for the long term. And that's when you love practice, because that's when practice is making you a great living. And I believe that right now, today, there's never been a better time to be a profitable chiropractic clinic.
I would agree.
Just got on my soapbox.
Yeah, I would agree with you 1,000%. So if you're not familiar with our statistical analysis, give us a holler. Let us show you what we do, because it is very comprehensive. It's industry leading. You're not going to see this anywhere else, because it was developed specifically for our clients.
It was. And I think that's something too unique about us, Troy, is that we're chiropractors, but we're also business people, and we have business degrees, and we've been in business other than just chiropractic. So we have a deep understanding of how business really works. Yeah,
and it's fun if you're an entrepreneur and you're interested in that stuff. It's fun, and it's fun to share the secrets to success, because there are some keys there. So if you're in practice and you think that you're just a chiropractor, you're not a business person, talk to us, because I think we can help you right off the bat if we teach you that you actually are running a business. Here's a few simple little things. Being in business is not a dirty word.
Correct.
Everybody on the street that comes to see you knows, even as a doctor, you're running a business.
Correct.
It doesn't matter what business you're running.
And here's an easy way to get a glimpse of what we do. Go to our website, katzconsultants.com. Scroll all the way down. Well, be sure you read everything, but scroll all the way down to the bottom of the homepage. Download our annual mid-year review, where in there we talk about some ways that you can insulate your practice from the economic trends that we're having right now, some things that you can do in your practice to build your profits up, and some other great, just easy tidbits of information that you can add to your practice immediately. So go download that right now. Yeah. All right, everybody. You got anything else, Troy?
Nope. I think we've covered everything. We've solved all the world's problems today.
And we did it without a cocktail napkin.
We did it. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to the KC CHIROpulse podcast, brought to you by Katz Consultants. We're always here. We're always available to help. Give us a shout. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya.